Welcome to Lead E3. I am so excited today to have with me Kristen Ivy and Elle Campbell. They are two of the authors of Creating a Lead Small Culture, along with Reggie Joiner, who is just an amazing leader. And I want you to know that I'm excited about this book. Kristen, Elle, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. So let's dive in with some questions. I've got them written right here. The first question, why did you write the book, The Lead Small Culture, Creating a Lead Small Culture?
I've been a small group leader for about 15 years now with students, and I'm just more convinced than ever that the best place for discipleship to happen is in the context of relationships. After being a part of a number of different ministries, interning with different churches, watching how different things run, I just don't think there's anything that can compete with the context of relationships when it comes to consistent group of peers, a consistent adult who's leaning into a kid's life or leaning into a student's life to really know them and help them process their faith in that kind of way. So about 3 years back, we started having some meetings at Orange, where I work, and we were inviting small group leaders in who we knew because we wanted to answer the question, how do you lead a small group really well? And every Tuesday night we would meet with leaders, different leaders, sometimes the same leaders, and process that question, put up ideas on the board, best practices, all kinds of things to help us figure that out. And one of the results of that was the book Lead Small by Reggie Joiner and Tom Shefchunas. But one night we were sitting there talking about it, and I remember, Reggie and I kind of had a little debrief afterward, and it was along the lines of saying, hey, when we go out on tour or we meet with leaders around the country, they've got so many questions, not just about what does it take to lead a small group well, but how do you create a ministry that really prioritizes for small group, that makes relationships a priority. And I go back in my mind to that night and I go, that was the moment when I knew that we needed another resource besides just the thing that we were getting ready to create, which was Lead Small. And that was something to church staff that would really help us get around this idea of how do you create a ministry where small groups can win.
I love it. You know that Elevation, we love fighting for groups and having great group experiences. And one of the things I love about the book is it's helped put some handles on some things that we knew were right, but we maybe didn't know how to do them. And one of the lines in the book, it says, most people need some type of structure to help them connect consistently. And for us, we needed that. We're moving so fast. I don't know that we slow down sometimes to put all the structure that we need in place to make sure it's great. We think we're doing the right thing, but I know this book helped put some handles for us, and so we're excited. We're using it in a big way to move our ministry forward, and just so thankful that you guys have put it together. And I know it's going to help a lot of people for sure because it's helping us. Now, give us a quick overview of Lead Small Culture so everybody knows where this book is taking them and helps them understand why they need it.
Sure. Well, basically throughout the whole book, there's kind of this thread that runs through it about belonging. And it's this idea that if you really want to make a difference in a kid's life, if you want to impact their faith for the long term, then the best thing you can do is to give them a place to belong. And so one of the things we talk about is how if you want a kid to understand the abstract kind of concepts of God and faith, then you need to give them something solid that they can anchor their faith to. And so we talk about how you need to give them a place and you need to give them a person. And for us, as we unpack in kind of the book, for us, that's giving them a small group and giving them a consistent small group leader to kind of make that happen for them.
After that, I think then we take that thread of belonging through the rest of the book, and really the core section of the book focuses on 3 things that leaders can do if they want to create a ministry that supports relationships and that supports small groups. And so the first of those is just to improve your structure, that we really believe there's a connection between structure and quality relationships. Sometimes I think we can undervalue that because it can feel like structure is something that's rigid or forced. But the way that you structure your ministry has a direct impact on the quality of relationships that you're going to have there. And then the next section is on empowering leaders. And again, that's because we believe that the scope of anybody's success really is, or the measure of their success really is the success of the small group leader that they recruit. So it's a lot about how do you find and recruit those leaders, how do you train those leaders, how do you empower them to do more and to call them into a shared ministry with you. So they're not just your volunteers, they're not just your chaperones, that we're really raising the bar on that. And the third section, or the third thing that we think ministry leaders can do, is to create an experience. Because what happens in that small group room really is the most important transformational thing. And I think that's something that Ella and I have talked a lot about, because we've been in those rooms, and we just really believe if everything points to that experience, you have to be evaluating that experience. You have to be thinking through, what does the physical environment look like? What kind of content are you supplying for them? Because we think that is really the most important and critical place.
Yeah, one of the things in the book, in the section, I call it the green section because it is money. Money green section of this book, Empower the Leader.
Yeah.
One of your big quotes is, maybe your leaders aren't committed because you haven't asked them to commit to something significant. And obviously, that's huge. And by you helping us have handles to do that, I think it just allows us to communicate more clearly. So this book is giving leaders, ministry leaders, those tools they need. And so I know that's really helpful, and I'm excited about just challenging our leaders to step up to a new level and be able to communicate that a little more clearly with the handles that are in this book. So I know it's going to be great. What's one thing that you hope leaders will take away from this book?
Well, it's a pretty dense book. We try to get really, really practical with kind of the stuff that we talk about, so there's a lot in there. But I think the one takeaway that we really hope people walk away with is this idea that there's something you can do every single week to improve the culture of small groups at your church. And there's a difference between just having small groups and having a culture of small groups. But whether it's improving your structure or empowering your leaders or creating a great experience, all those things are things that you can do every single week to some degree. And so our hope is that we can kind of take that and make it really tangible for people so they feel like they have something practical that they can do on a regular basis.
Definitely. So outside of this book, can you tell me a little bit about maybe some of the resources that you're putting together to give people the resources to come up with something weekly? I know you guys have some things going, right?
Biggest thing that I would say is the Lead Small app. I know that we're so excited to finally have it in our hands, on our phones for the first time. We've been working on it for a long time. I think the dreaming stages were amazing. I mean, if you can imagine sitting around a table and just going, what if an app could do this? There was just a lot of that. And so now it's here, and it's free, and it's just a resource that helps every small group leader, pretty much do anything they would want to do with an app to help them lead small.
I think it's great. It's on my phone. It's on all of our phones on the staff at Elevation. We really do love it. And I love that you're not only writing a book and trying to, as you mentioned, it's dense. There's so much content in here. It's not a book you can just cruise through once and think you've got it all figured out. It's something that, honestly, there's a lifetime of wrestling and application and what to do, but trying to figure out how to do it weekly and make those touches to make it just a little better, I know is important to you guys. And so thank you for just creating additional resources that support this and support the philosophy of what we're doing, and making sure that we're doing a good job by giving us what we need to make it happen. And so Lead Small app, we love it. You guys know that I use it for even my for my group, and I keep my kids' names on there. I'm praying for them. I follow up with them. I got little pictures of all of them on there. And so it's a great resource as well, and it's free. It just goes right along with what we've got, so I love it a lot. Next thing, how do you feel this book is going to help ministry leaders?
My favorite part about the book and about the whole writing process are the people that we get to talk to, the people we get to have conversations with. And so my favorite part about the book specifically are the contributors. And they're mentioned up front. There's over 20 people who show up throughout the book with their personal stories. And, that's everything from just different conversations that we had with leaders in multi-site churches, urban churches, rural churches, mega churches, small country town churches, and they're all trying to figure this out as it relates to age group ministry. So you have examples from preschool and elementary and student. And in my mind, that's the richest part of the book, because they're just real world, practical, specific examples. And it's not one model of how to do this, but it's looking at different people's answer to the question, because we believe this is a philosophy that can be worked out in a number of different ways, but it just gives you some jumping off points to go, okay, that this is how they're doing it, in a context like ours. How can we customize that and contextualize that for our ministry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the thing that I love too is just how practical it gets. We've just in our brainstorming meetings have used the word handbook quite a bit. Like, we really hope that this can kind of fulfill that for churches. Just when we were working on it, Reggie used to ask me on a regular basis, and in my church, I oversee all the small groups and small group leaders for our middle school ministry. And I just remember Reggie would ask me, like, all the time when we were writing this, okay, I want you to make a list of every single thing that you do to make sure small groups are running well and to make sure that your small group leaders are trained. And I don't even know how many times I made that list. It was a lot of times. But what we wanted to do is really figure out every single thing that ministry leaders need to do to make sure that this is happening and make sure that they show up somewhere in the book. So because of that, we tried to make it really practical. So things like how to structure your budget, how to recruit small group leaders, how to place them in your ministry, and like Kristen mentioned, even like the physical space of your small groups, how to think about all of those things in really practical, kind of tangible ways.
That's awesome. So why do we need this book? Why do we need another book on our shelves? I've got a bajillion books behind me. We love reading books in ministry. We love reading books and then getting on to the next book. But you said this is a handbook, and so a handbook is something that you're always going back to. Tell me, why do we even need this book?
Well, Kristen mentioned this already, and before I actually came on to write this book with Reggie and Kristen, I had actually already been working on a book like this because in my kind of realm, in my circle, I just blog a lot about small groups, and so I had a lot of people asking me, not because they thought I knew the answers, but just because they were looking for people to ask and have conversations with, just all these questions about how to structure a ministry that supports small groups. So people were asking so many questions. I know that Kristen and Reggie heard it all the time from people in their circles. And so the need was there, and we did a ton of looking and just couldn't really find much that answered these questions, specifically for children and teenagers small groups. We found a lot of books about adult small groups, but not a ton that helped a ministry leader do that for the next generation.
I was just going to jump off of that too and say, I think one of the reasons that it's helpful is it's a conversation starter. I love the framework behind it because it just gives a common language so that as you're talking as a staff or as you're connecting with ministry leaders around the country, it gives you some jumping off places to begin a conversation. So you would go, hey, if you read about how Tom Shifshunas does this for his middle school ministry, you read about how Nina Schmigel is doing this in DC, you start putting these people together, and then you can go, okay, now what does that look like for us? I just think it's a great way to begin a conversation.
Yeah, and I think there's something in here. No, I know there's something in here that not only helps everybody, but there's some tendency for us to go, oh, we do groups. Like we already do groups. And
Yes.
I would just challenge that thought to say, yeah, we're doing them, and some people are doing them better than others. But I know this helped us get those handles, that framework, that handbook like they talk about, to get the next step or fine-tune or really build some structure and some intentionality about what we want to accomplish. Because I could give anecdotal stories of great group leaders that are doing an awesome job, but I don't know if it was because we equipped them or because they're just called for it or they just knew what we wanted to see happen, even if we weren't communicating that well. And so going back to this book, and even what you mentioned earlier about a person and a place and starting there and just making sure they understand those basic themes that are found right at the beginning of the book will just help start great conversations. We had a meeting just yesterday where we took a large group of our volunteers that lead e-groups for 3 through kindergarten through the principle of just a person and a place. And then afterwards we opened it up for discussion time for them to talk in their tables or round tables just about how this applies, how we can better equip them, and just start a conversation. So I talked for 15-20 minutes, and I thought maybe they'd need 10 minutes to kind of just throw out some initial ideas because I was dropping it on them for the very first time. But they just continued going and talking so very much, and they got so excited about it. And yet it's a really basic principle that you would think that some of your group leaders already get. But giving them those handles, get them something to go around, really helps them. Now, I know we can get the book on the website and at Amazon. What's the website for the book?
Orangebooks.com.
Orangebooks.com. You should order approximately 5 million. Don't order 5 million. You should definitely order more than one, because that wouldn't make any sense, because you have lots of people that you want to take through this. Certainly start with your team. We've already talked about the Lead Small app that's available. I know there's also a Lead Small website, right, with or a blog that has some additional information as well.
Yeah, the Lead Small blog is also free, and it's just information for small group leaders, by small group leaders, for small group leaders of every age group.
That's great. And so those of you that are trying to create content to push out to your volunteers saying, hey, learn this, do this, here's the things you need to know, and you're always trying to figure out new content, this is a great place for you to find it on this blog. You can just rip it off, take it, let them know that it's resources just to help them, and they're generally going to appreciate it because it's in their language, because it is group leaders talking to group leaders, and that's what you want to do. And so I can't say it enough. Get this book. You're going to absolutely love it. You'll be challenged by it. We're going to make some room in the comments section to start a dialogue here on Lead E3. Go to the website. Be sure to give them feedback. Rate this Amazon book as the greatest book you've ever read, or right behind the Bible maybe, but just give it the credit it deserves. It will help your ministry, so I'm so excited about it. Chris and Elle, thank you so much for jumping on with us today. We've had a great time together.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.